It started with a slap that shouldn't have happened. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Sharp. Final. Unforgivable. Outside Rosie's diner on Route 9, the world froze. 15 people stood in the parking lot, phones raised, recording everything. But nobody moved to help. Frank Miller stood there, 80 years old, one hand touching his burning cheek. His reading glasses lay shattered on the pavement. A thin line of blood trickled from a cut near his eye. He didn't cry out. He didn't fall backward. He just stood there looking at the young man who had hit him with eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. But what the crowd didn't know was who that old man really was. 2 hours earlier, Frank had woken up at 5:30 in the morning. No alarm. His body just knew, trained by decades of military discipline. He made coffee in his small apartment above Miller's hardware store. The place was simple, a bed, a table, 2 chairs. But the walls told stories. Photographs everywhere. Young men in uniforms. Helicopters. Deserts and mountains and places that looked like the end of the world. In every picture, Frank was there. Always in the back. Never smiling much. On his dresser sat a locked wooden box. Inside were 3 medals, a folded flag, and letters he never showed anyone. He didn't open it anymore. Some doors were better left closed. Frank pulled on his usual clothes, jeans, a plain blue shirt, and a jacket with a small American flag pin. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg. An old injury from a helicopter crash in 1989. When people asked, he just said, "Bad landing," and changed the subject. If you believe respect shouldn't depend on age, hit like and type honor in the comments. Frank walked to Rosie's diner every Tuesday morning. Same time. Same order. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, black coffee. The waitress, Maria, always saved him the corner booth by the window. She knew he liked watching the sunrise over the Blue Ridge Mountains. "Morning, Frank," Maria said, coffee pot already in hand. "Morning, Maria. How's your boy doing?" Her face lit up. "So much better. That medicine you helped us pay for last month? It's working. Doctor says Tommy's going to be just fine." Frank waved his hand like it was nothing. "Glad to hear it." "Frank, that was $2,000. "Coffee's getting cold," he interrupted gently. Maria smiled, shook her head, and walked away. That was Frank. Always helping. Never wanting credit. He ate slowly, reading the newspaper. The world kept spinning faster, getting louder, more divided. But Frank stayed the same. Quiet, steady, watching everything with patient eyes. After breakfast, he left a $15 tip on an $8 meal. He always did. On this day, that's when everything changed. Frank pushed open the diner door and stepped into the bright morning sun. He reached for his sunglasses but fumbled them. They fell to the ground, landing right next to a gleaming black motorcycle. He bent down, slowly, his back didn't bend like it used to, and picked them up. As he straightened, his elbow barely grazed the motorcycle's side mirror. "Hey!" Frank turned around. 4 men in leather vests were walking toward him fast. The one in front, mid-20s, tattoos crawling up his neck, had fury in his eyes. His name was Jake Morrison. "You just touched my bike, old man." Frank raised his hands peacefully. "I apologize. Didn't mean any harm." "Didn't mean any harm." Jake's voice got louder. People started coming out of the diner to watch. "You know what this bike cost? More than you make in a year, Grandpa." His 3 friends laughed and moved closer, forming a half circle. Frank stayed calm. "I said I was sorry, son. No damage done." "No damage." Jake stepped into Frank's space, close enough that Frank could smell cigarettes and cheap beer. "You think you can just touch people's property and walk away?" The crowd was growing now. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "This is going to be good." But nobody knew what was about to happen. "Look," Frank said quietly, his voice still steady. "I apologize. Let me buy you breakfast to make up for it." Jake's face twisted. "I don't want your broke old man money." "Then what do you want?" "I want respect." Jake shouted, "I'm sick of people like you thinking you can do whatever you want." Frank's expression changed slightly. Something old and hard flickered in his eyes. "Son, you need to calm down." That's when Jake swung. The slap echoed across the entire parking lot. The sound was louder than the traffic, louder than the wind, louder than everything. Frank's head snapped to the side. His glasses flew off and shattered on the pavement. Jake's ring caught Frank's cheekbone, opening a small cut that immediately started bleeding. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. But Frank didn't fall, didn't stumble, didn't even touch his face. He just stood there, looking at Jake with those patient, dangerous eyes. No one moved. The only thing louder than the slap was the silence that followed. Asterisk, asterisk. You shouldn't have done that, son, Frank said softly. Jake laughed, adrenaline making him bold. What are you going to do about it? Call the cops. His friends joined in, laughing and high-fiving. Frank reached into his jacket pocket. Everyone tensed. Was he reaching for a weapon? Was this old man crazy enough to fight back? But Frank only pulled out an old flip phone, the kind nobody used anymore. He pressed one button. Speed dial. The phone rang once. This is Miller, Frank said. His voice was different now. Stronger. Clearer. Like a man who'd given orders to hundreds of soldiers. I need you to come get me. Rosie's Diner, Route 9, Virginia. A pause. Yes, sir. Code red situation. That would be appreciated. He closed the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Jake was still laughing. Who'd you call? Your nursing home? They gonna send the bingo bus? His friends doubled over laughing. Frank didn't respond. He just looked at his watch, an old military watch with scratches covering the face. 15 minutes, he said to no one in particular. Maria rushed out of the diner with a clean towel and ice. Frank. Oh my God, are you okay? Should I call 911? Already made my call, Maria. Frank said, just smiled a little. Jake was getting annoyed now. The old man wasn't acting right. Wasn't scared. Wasn't running away. Just standing there like he was waiting for a bus. You gonna stand there all day, Grandpa? Just waiting, Frank said calmly. For what? Frank looked up at the clear blue sky. You'll see. The minutes crawled by like hours. Slow. Heavy. Thick with tension. Jake and his friends leaned against their motorcycles, smoking and joking. But they kept glancing at Frank, who hadn't moved an inch. Just standing there in the morning sun, blood slowly drying on his face. Waiting. The crowd grew larger. Word was spreading. Some bikers beat up an old man. More phones came out. Everyone wanted to catch what happened next. Officer Chun from the local police pulled into the parking lot. Someone called about a disturbance. Right here, officer, Maria said, pointing at Jake. That man assaulted Frank. Chun looked at Frank's face, then at Jake. Sir, I'm going to need you to. That's when someone pointed at the sky. You guys hear that? At first, it sounded like distant thunder. A low rumble that you felt in your chest before your ears could process it. Then it got louder. And louder. The ground began to tremble. Everyone looked up. Coming over the tree line, flying low and fast like a hawk chasing prey, was a UH-60 Black Hawk military helicopter. The crowd went silent. Jake's cigarette fell from his mouth. The helicopter came straight at them, flying lower than seemed safe, lower than seemed legal. The sound was overwhelming, a deep whump-whump-whump that you felt in your bones. What the hell? Jake started. The Black Hawk descended into the empty field next to Rosie's Diner, just 20 yards from where everyone stood. The rotor washed it like a hurricane. Dust exploded in every direction. Napkins and menus flew through the air. Car alarms started screaming. People covered their faces and stumbled backward. But Frank didn't move. He just stood there, hand on his bleeding cheek, watching the helicopter land with something that looked almost like pride in his eyes. Nobody was ready for what came next. Through the dust storm, figures emerged from the helicopter. 6 soldiers in full combat uniforms moved out in perfect formation. They didn't run, didn't rush, just moved with the kind of calm confidence that comes from doing dangerous things 1,000 times before. They weren't carrying rifles. Didn't need to. Their presence was weapon enough. The last person to step off the Black Hawk was different from the others. Older, maybe 55, with gray at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. His uniform had more patches, more medals, more everything. The eagle insignia on his chest marked him as a full colonel. His name was Thomas Webb. He walked straight through the dust cloud like it wasn't there. Like the wind bending trees and flipping tables meant nothing. He walked straight to Frank. The crowd held its breath. Phones trembled in shaking hands. Even Officer Chin stepped back, suddenly understanding this was way above his pay grade. Colonel Webb stopped 3 feet from Frank. He looked at the cut on Frank's face. The red handprint on his cheek. The shattered glasses on the ground. His jaw tightened. Then he did something nobody expected. He dropped to one knee. "I'm here, sir," Colonel Webb said, his voice rough with emotion. Frank nodded once. "Appreciate it, Tom. Been a while." "Not long enough if people are putting hands on you." Webb stood slowly. "Who did this?" Frank turned and pointed at Jake with one weathered finger. That young man there. The temperature in the parking lot seemed to drop 20 degrees. Colonel Webb walked toward Jake slowly. The 5 soldiers followed, spreading out in a loose semicircle. Not threatening, not aggressive, just there, like mountains that had suddenly appeared. Jake's 3 friends had already started backing away, hands up, faces pale. We didn't do nothing, man. This isn't our problem. But Jake stood his ground, though his confidence was cracking like thin ice. His hands were shaking now. Who are you people? His voice broke slightly. Colonel Webb stopped 5 feet away. When he spoke, his voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Everyone heard every word. I'm Colonel Thomas Webb, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, United States Army. The Night Stalkers. He paused, letting that sink in. And you just assaulted my commanding officer. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped their phone. Jake's face went white as snow. You're what? Webb pointed at Frank. That man you slapped? That's Lieutenant Colonel Franklin James Miller, retired. 28 years of active service. 3 combat tours. 2 Bronze Stars. 1 Silver Star. The Distinguished Flying Cross. He took another step forward. Jake took a step back. He flew rescue missions in places you can't even pronounce. He pulled wounded soldiers out of situations you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares. Places where the air was so full of bullets it looked like rain. Webb's voice dropped lower, somehow more powerful in its quietness. You didn't hit an old man. You hit a legend who trained half the pilots in the United States military. You hit a soldier who built the very road you're standing on. Jake's knees looked like they might give out. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, Webb said. Because men like Colonel Miller don't walk around bragging about their service. They don't wear it like a costume. They just live quietly, helping their communities, being decent human beings. He gestured to the soldiers behind him. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez here? Colonel Miller pulled him out of a crashed helicopter in Iraq in 2007. Flew through an active firefight to do it. Rodriguez stepped forward and nodded at Frank with pure respect in his eyes. Captain Chun? Miller trained him personally for 2 years. A younger officer, couldn't be more than 30, stood at attention. Lieutenant Jackson? Miller saved her entire unit in Afghanistan when their transport went down in mountains. Command had written them off. Said it was too dangerous, too dark, too much enemy fire. But not him. A woman with scars on her neck saluted Frank. Her eyes were wet. We all owe him our lives, Webb said simply. And today we pay our debts. But justice wasn't finished yet. 2 more police cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. The officer stepped out, saw the military helicopter, saw the soldiers, and immediately radioed for their supervisor. Within minutes, a police captain named Davis arrived. She was 50, gray-haired, tough as nails. She took one look at the situation and walked straight to Colonel Webb. Colonel, I'm Captain Davis, County Police. What's the situation? Ma'am, that civilian, he pointed at Jake, committed assault and battery on a retired Army officer. We have approximately 30 witnesses and multiple video recordings. Davis turned to Frank. Sir, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, Frank said quietly. Just a scratch. Would you like to press charges? The parking lot went completely silent. Everyone was watching Frank. Jake looked like he might throw up. His tough guy act had completely dissolved. Now he just looked like what he really was, a scared 26-year-old who'd made a terrible mistake. Can I talk to him first? Frank asked. Davis looked surprised but nodded. Of course, sir. It's your call. Please, if you are enjoying this story, like and hit the subscription button to help us create more stories. Frank walked slowly toward Jake. Each step was deliberate. His bad leg dragged slightly, a reminder of old wounds from old wars. The crowd held its breath. Jake was crying now, tears running down his face. I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I've been so angry lately, and... What's your full name, son? Frank's voice was gentle. Jake Morrison. How old are you, Jake? 26. You have family? People who depend on you? Jake nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. My mom. She raised me alone after my dad left. And my little sister, Amy. She's 14. She's got leukemia. Stage 3. The hospital bills are destroying us. I work 3 jobs, and it's still not enough. I've been so stressed and angry, and I snapped. But that's no excuse. What I did was wrong. So wrong. Frank stood there, the morning sun behind him, making his gray hair look almost white. He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The helicopter's engines were cooling down, ticking softly. Finally, Frank spoke. "Officer Davis." "Yes, sir," he replied. "I'm not going to press charges." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. "Frank," Colonel Webb started, clearly disagreed. Frank held up his hand. "But," he said, turning back to Jake, "you're going to do something for me." "Anything," Jake said immediately. "Anything at all. I'll do whatever you want. You're going to come work at Miller's hardware store. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For hours each day. No pay. For 3 weeks. Jake nodded frantically. "Yes, sir. Absolutely. You're going to learn what it means to serve your community. To help people who can't help themselves, elderly folks who need their porches fixed, single mothers who can't afford a plumber, veterans who need a hand with home repairs. You're going to start treating every person you meet with respect and dignity, especially the ones you think don't matter. I will. I promise. Please hit the subscribe button for more real stories of silent heroes." As we continue our story, the crowd erupted in applause. People who'd been recording a fight were now witnessing something that restored their faith in humanity. Maria from the diner ran over and hugged Frank tight. "You're too good for this world, Frank Miller." "Just doing what's right, Maria." Officer Chen approached Jake. "You understand how lucky you are, right? If this man wanted to press charges, you'd be looking at serious prison time." "I know," Jake said quietly. Captain Davis shook Frank's hand. "Sir, that was one of the most remarkable things I've ever witnessed. We need more people like you." "We all just need to remember we're all human," Frank said. "We all make mistakes. Question is whether we learn from them." Colonel Webb walked over, shaking his head with a smile. "You always were too soft, sir. Back in the day, we'd have had this punk doing push-ups until sunrise." "Maybe," Frank said. "Or maybe I just remember what it's like to be young and angry and stupid. Someone gave me a chance once. Figure I should pass it forward." "Who gave you a chance?" "Colonel Davis. He's retired now, lives in Florida. When I was 25, I got in a bar fight, almost killed a guy. Davis could have ended my career. Instead, he told me, 'Miller, you can either waste your life being angry, or you can use that fire to do something good.' Changed my whole life." "How long can you stay, Tom?" Frank asked. "Gotta be wheels up in 90 minutes. But I made the crew stop at Betty's Bakery in town." Webb grinned. "Brought you 24 of those apple turnovers you love." Frank's whole face lit up for the first time all morning. "Now that's what I call proper military logistics." The soldiers started preparing for departure. But before they left, each one came over personally. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez shook Frank's hand. "Still got that scar you gave me, sir. When you told me on the radio, 'Rodriguez, you hold on, I'm coming to get you,' I knew I'd make it." Captain Chen saluted. "Everything I know about flying, I learned from you, Colonel." Lieutenant Jackson actually hugged him. "You saved my life. My daughter knows her mom is alive because of you." One by one, they said goodbye. These were tough soldiers who'd fought in the hardest places on Earth. But around Frank, they were like sons saying goodbye to their father. The helicopter spun up again, rotors building speed. "Take care of yourself, Frank," Webb shouted over the noise. "And call if you ever need anything. Anything at all." "Will do, Tom. Fly safe." The Black Hawk lifted off, dust swirling again. It climbed into the blue sky, banked left, and disappeared over the mountains. The roar faded to a memory. Nobody who was there that day would ever forget it. The parking lot slowly returned to normal. People started heading to their cars, still talking excitedly, still recording final thoughts for their social media. "Did you see that? That was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. I'm literally crying. Faith in humanity restored." Frank patted his shoulder and walked back toward the diner. His leg was hurting more now, all that standing. Maria was waiting at the door with a fresh cup of coffee and a slice of pie. "On the house," she said. "For the rest of your life, Frank Miller, you eat free at Rosie's." "That's not necessary," Frank said. "It absolutely is," Maria replied. But he was smiling. The video went viral. Bikers slapped 80-year-old veteran. 15 minutes later, Black Hawk arrived, had been viewed 30 million times. News stations called. Talk shows requested interviews. Frank declined them all. I don't need the attention, he told Maria over coffee. I did what anyone should do. But Rosie's Diner became famous. People drove from 5 states away just to eat there, to stand in the parking lot where it happened, to maybe catch a glimpse of Frank. The owner, Rose herself, painted a mural on the sidewall. It showed a Black Hawk helicopter flying over mountains, and underneath, Home of Heroes, Rosie's Diner, established 1952, where honor still matters. The town council voted to rename the street Miller Way. Frank asked them not to. They did it anyway. Frank felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not in himself. He'd never been good at that. Pride in what people could become when someone believed in them. 1 year after the slap heard around the world, the town threw a ceremony. They'd built a small park next to the diner. In the center stood a statue, not of Frank, he'd refused that, but of a soldier helping another soldier to his feet. Underneath, a plaque read, "In honor of Lieutenant Colonel Franklin James Miller and all who serve, dignity comes not from never falling, but from how we rise." Frank stood in his dress uniform, the first time he'd worn it in 15 years. Medals gleamed on his chest. His back was straighter, his eyes bright. Colonel Webb was there. Jake and his family. Maria. Half the town. The mayor gave a speech. This town learned something important last year. We learned that justice without mercy is just revenge. We learned that everyone deserves a second chance. And we learned that the quietest people are often the strongest. Frank closed his box and went to bed. Outside his window, the town was quiet. Peaceful. Better than it had been a year ago. Because sometimes all it takes to change the world is one moment of mercy. One act of grace. One person who believes that everyone, no matter what they've done, deserves a second chance. If you believe respect shouldn't depend on age, hit like and type honor in the comments. Because the quiet ones are the strongest. Thank you for watching today's story, and subscribe for more stories of silent heroes. And remember, dignity doesn't come from never falling. It comes from how we rise when we do.